Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. We're also on BitChute. And I've got 4 other podcasts: the Awakening Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, the Speaking Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast. And all can be found on roycollin.com. Today, my guest, please welcome, and a seasoned traveler, which I always enjoy talking about. Please welcome Lex Latkovski.
Very good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Roy. Thanks for having me on your show.
No problem at all. So you might let the listeners know who's Lex.
Well, the main reason I'm on this show today is about meditation and mindfulness. But one of my biggest thrills in life is seeing the world. So I've been so far to 83 different countries. I'm getting married here in October, and I'm going to go see a number 84 and 85 on my honeymoon.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Argentina and Chile. And I've been to all 50 states in America, which is very unusual for an American. And I've been to 42 of the 50 European countries. I got 8 left. But I lived at a Zen Monastery in Southern California for 16 months, 1 year straight, and then 4 other months. And this picture behind me, my backdrop is cabin 4 at the Yokoji Zen Mountain Center in Southern California, up in the mountains around 6,000 feet. I lived there and studied mindfulness and meditation in the Zen, Rinzai Zen tradition primarily, but the Soto Zen as well. And I live currently in Colorado Springs, up in the mountains right below Pikes Peak. And I couldn't be happier in the mountains. I don't know what it is. I've been all over the world, and I've been big cities and small cities and beaches, but there's something about the mountains just makes me feel like this is my home. So
excellent. I think your body feels the energy where it's right for you. So
exactly.
How did you get into Zen? What made you to kind of take a year out and then later 4 months to start doing that?
Well, a buddy of mine, actually, from when I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, he went to a 7-day silent retreat at this place that's in my backdrop. It's called ZMC. And he went, and I didn't know about it. And he came back and he was just telling me, "Hey, Lex, I found what you're looking for." And I said, I didn't know I was looking for anything. And so he starts to explain it to me. And I said, I didn't even know this was on the menu of available options in life. And so a few months later, he and I drove 5 hours from Phoenix to this Zen center. And I did a 1-week retreat and absolutely fell in love with it. And just the simplicity and the mindfulness and sitting 6 hours a day and 3 hours of yoga and eating healthy vegetarian meals and getting up early and going to bed early. It just resonated. So I started doing them once a year. And every time I did it, I just came back super energized and just on fire. And people noticed it. And then eventually, after doing about 6 or 7 of those retreats in the first few years, I called up the Zen master and I said, I want to stop dorking around with this 7-day retreat. I want to do this like one of the monks do. And he's like, "Okay, come live here." So about a year later, I was living there for a year and absolutely loved it. And then after that was over, I would go back a month here, 6 weeks there, and so another 4 months. So it was happenstance, which is, I guess, a lot of life, and the right teacher appeared, which was my buddy Patrick from Phoenix. So,
was over that year period, was every day kind of the same? Did you have a routine that you just constantly followed?
Yeah. So at ZMC, they follow the traditional, you wake up around 5 a.m. and you start sitting around 6 a.m. and you do a 30-minute period, and then you walk for 10 minutes to shake out your legs or take a bio break. And then you sit for another 30 minutes, then another 10-minute stretch, and then another 30 minutes. And then there's a breakfast. And then after breakfast, you have about an hour break or half an hour break. Then you sit again 3 more times. 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes with 10 minutes in between. Then you have lunch, and then we all go to work. So we all work at the facility, for example, for a couple hours doing maintenance or housekeeping or whatever. And then we sit again in the late afternoon. Then we have dinner, and then we sit again in the evening. So on the average period or the average day, I was getting anywhere between 4 to 6 hours a day of silent meditation with the other residents or the guests. And then during the retreats, it was a little bit more intense. There was more sitting and less work. So the minimum I would get when I was there was 3 hours of meditation a day, which is, I never had a bad, if you count the thousands of times I sat down on a cushion for 30 minutes at a time, I didn't have one bad experience or one bad session. And then we did have days off on Monday and Tuesday where it was kind of free time. And depending upon what time of year it was, we either didn't have to sit more than an hour, but during the heavier times, we'd sit for a couple of hours. So it was every day we were sitting at least a little bit. And during retreats, we were sitting 6-9 hours a day. So.
And did they tell you, like, I suppose prior to you taking the year out, when you done it the first time, did they tell you, okay, just remain silent, or how did they actually train you in what you should be doing? Because, there's a lot of people have different thoughts on what meditation really is.
Exactly. So that's a good point. So if you take all the 4 billion adults in the world, there's 4 billion different ways to meditate. So there is no one way. Everyone's experience is unique. So what they did train you at the beginning was sit down, shut up. They didn't, I'm paraphrasing. They would never use the word shut up, but sit down, shut up, don't move, don't itch, don't look around. And basically, like, if you have an itch, just see what happens. And eventually it goes away, but don't look around. Don't pull anyone else in the room out of their meditation. And so they would give us a crash course for the new people like myself. And okay, here's the Zendo. Here's where you're going to sit. Here's how you come in. Here's how you bow. Here's how you do your 3 bows. Here's how you do this. But basically you learn by watching. So that's like the form. And then they have all these chants that took a long time to memorize. And as far as the mindfulness or the meditation practice, so the Zen master, my original Zen master, his name was Junpo Dennis Kelly, and he just passed away back, I think, in November. He was in his 70s. But the man who ran ZMC in this picture behind me, his name is Tenshin Charles Fletcher. He's a British guy that has been living in America since the 80s. And he straddled both sides of the Zen tradition. So there's 2 sides of Zen. There's Soto and Rinzai. And they both worked differently with how you train people. And Rinzai is more around koans. I'm sorry, I might be mixing this up now. It's been a while. But one focuses on koans, which is like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? What did your face look like before your parents met? Things like that your brain can't figure out naturally, and you have to kind of stew on it. So Tenshin luckily had both Soto and Rinzai experience, and he basically said, what's going to work for you, instead of saying, here's your meditation practice, here's what you got to do, and adding extra stuff. He just let me work on shikantaza, which is Japanese for just sit, mind hit, or hit mind, which basically means just sit and let your experience and your mind experience this particular moment. So I went to learn how to let go of things. I didn't go there to learn more layers of thought or layers of concepts or the 7 chakras or anything like that. None of that stuff meant anything to me. So Tenshin allowed me to do shikantaza, but I might be mispronouncing it. Anyway, shikantaza, yes. And which was basically just sit down and experience what's happening right now. So over the course of that year, my experience and where my mind would go was, it was all over the place. But so I guess that's the training that they were trying to provide, which was finding what would work best for each individual student. And then he would fine tune it when you had Dokusan, the meeting of the mind.
And so you were in that with your eyes open, I presume, yeah, when they were saying don't be looking around and everything, but you're just kind of stare. Because I know that I think it was Gilong Tong. He said, yeah, you can be just on the beach looking out at the horizon and everything. And I've often kind of done my own kind of mental meditation on that and just being present. But some people think you have to close your eyes when you're meditating.
Well, half the room had their eyes open and half the room had their eyes closed. So that was another thing. He wouldn't go around, or whoever was in charge at the moment wouldn't go around and beat people up because they had their eyes closed or their eyes open. They suggested, the teachers always said, keep your eyes open because that's how you go through life. You don't go through life with your eyes closed, and you can't insulate yourself from stimulus or things you don't like in life. And so again, they gave me leeway, and I had my eyes closed for the most part, just because it was one less input that I had to worry about. So if I close my eyes, now all I'm working on is my sense of humidity and my sense of smell and feeling the cushion on my butt, or and hearing things like the birds chirping or something. So it works. For some people, they want their eyes open. For some people, they want to close. It doesn't matter. Just find whatever works for you, because if people tell you to keep your eyes open, but you're always distracted, if you're an easily distractible person, keeping your eyes open might be a really bad thing.
So what about holding your hands? Because a lot of different forms of meditation. Hold your fingers this way, this way, this way. We do. I mean, I don't do that myself, but I'm just curious what we told and what your thoughts are.
That's a good question. So at the retreat, they tell you to put your hand. So you I don't know if my background's going to mess this up, but you take your right hand and you make your left hand into a fist, and then you put your right hand around the fist of your left hand. So and then basically you keep it, on your waist when you're sitting. And they do say sometimes then to put your thumbs together like this so that you can kind of connect the energy or whatever. But I was lucky enough to have a really cool robe, a monk's robe. So it had really long sleeves where I could hide my Kleenexes and whatever. And so when I was walking around, I had my hands inside of the sleeves anyway, so you couldn't tell whether I even had hands or not. So when I was sitting, I could sit the way that I wanted, which was always like this. So, and eventually, that part just goes away as far as worrying about what your hands are doing. And then the deeper and the deeper I would go into my sitting, I would notice different things outside of my sitting. So it was, or how my hands were. So the basic thing is find something that's comfortable, no matter who you are or where you are. Find something that's comfortable that you can stay on or stay with for 15, 30 minutes, and try not to move. So find whatever's comfortable for your thing. It's like, I find it really hard to maintain something that's not natural. So if it's not natural, it's not going to work, in my opinion. So find something that's natural. And there's actually a really good book. I've got it over here on my bookshelf. You can't see it because it's virtual background, but it's called the Zen Commandments. Have you ever read that, Roy?
No, I haven't.
It's friggin' brilliant. It's a guy named Dean Sluyter who wrote the book. I'm not related to him anyway. I'm not trying to plug his book, but I've given out probably 20 copies of this in my life. And it's a guy that was doing meditation for a long time, wrote this really funny book with lots of pop culture references. But I'll never forget, one of his chapters was like, people were upset. They went to a meditation retreat and they were upset because there was noise over here, or the cleaning lady was using a vacuum way, way over, and it was distracting them. And the person kept saying, if the radiator wasn't making a noise, or if that lady wasn't making a noise, or if the birds weren't chirping. And there's always some reason to find an excuse for something's not right. And so tell that lady to stop, tell the birds to stop, turn the radiator off. And this person would probably still find something that was wrong. So going back to what I was saying about the hands, it's really important to find something that you can do that's not going to add to any additional strain, because there's already enough that people have to deal with when they're meditating. Simplicity is always best for me.
Brilliant. And I think it's 83 countries that you've been to, and you mentioned you're going to another few, which is fantastic. I'm just curious, when you visited all these different countries, did you actually check out meditation as well in the different places, and what kind of did you find out?
Yeah, it's very good. So I lived in South Korea and near Seoul for 2 months at one point, and I went and did a 9-day silent retreat down in the mountains somewhere far south of Seoul, and it was all in Korean. And there were a few other white people there. I'm not trying to be funny, but there was actually a guy from Poland, so
he was probably selling vodka to you.
I wish. No, So, so the people was everything was in Korean. The chants were in Korean. There was no chance of learning it in 7 days, so it was completely foreign. But I did that. It was fantastic because I needed a recharge. Because Seoul, I don't know if you've ever been to Seoul, Korea, but it's like one of the most crazy, loud, dynamic cities in the world. It's great, but it's also overwhelming. So I needed a retreat. And then I went to places in Vietnam. I did a 7 day silent retreat in Thailand.
So
Down
you
in
might
the
tell
south.
me, because I've done sound meditation, but just for like, I don't know, an hour or something like that. But with a sound retreat, is that just continuous? You're lying down and you're getting all the music. You might just tell me what it entails.
Okay, so I mentioned three. There was one that I did in South Korea, and I did a year or 16 months at ZMC, and then I did that one 7 day in Surat Thani, Thailand. So which one do you want me to talk about?
Just, I presume they're all different, but whichever one kind of you think was most interesting for you with the sound one.
All right, cool. So the one that most people would appreciate, because everybody wants to go to Thailand. So I did this one in Surat Thani, Thailand, down near Phuket, and it was already after I'd done this year at ZMC, and it was I think it was Vipassana was the format, and it was so what it was it was on this huge property, and they had female and male separated, almost like dormitories, but it was all just like you open up the door to go into your room. It looked like a jail cell. It was there was no bed, there was there were no beds, no furniture, no electrical. It was basically just a concrete place that you would sleep, and they had a mat on the floor, and you were supposed to bring your own pillow. And they told you not to bring a pillow, just bring like a piece of wood, because they wanted you to sleep like the Buddha or whatever. So, so we stayed in. Everybody had their own room, and you were supposed to be silent the whole time. And they would have this bell that would wake you up at 5 o'clock or whatever. And you would go to the meditation area, and it was outdoors. It was pretty cool. It was under this huge, beautiful gazebo that would have 100 or so people sitting, and you would just sit down on your cushion and face the front, and they would be periods of silence, and then you would get up and they would tell you to go walk through, mindfully walk through the jungle or whatever on the trails, and just pay attention to your feet. Then you would come back and sit down, and then there would be a Dharma talk by the priest, and actually he was a British guy. The people that ran it were Thai, but the main speaker, or the main not Zen master, but the main teacher was a British guy. And his Dharma talks were probably the best Dharma talks I've ever heard in my whole life. And he would sit there like lazy. He had his legs crossed in this funny, weird thing. And he would sit sideways with his hand on his arm. And I thought he was reading it because it was so brilliant. I thought he was reading a script, because what he was saying was probably the most profound I've ever heard. And he would speak for about an hour. Then we would have lunch. These included breakfast and lunch and dinner, but everything was in silence. And you weren't supposed to talk to anybody, at lunch. You weren't supposed to talk to anybody at the meals. You weren't supposed to talk to anybody. And, when you went to the bathroom. Okay, of course, with 100 people from all over the world, you had guys and girls that were talking in the hallways or something, but I would try to avoid them so I didn't get distracted. So, it was couple days it usually takes a couple days to do this, to where you get into the groove, to where you kind of let go of. It's like going on vacation. It's like it takes a couple days to get to vacation mode, and then the last part of the vacation is always, like it feels like a vacation because you've let the real world go. So that's what the meditation was like. So after a few days, everybody starts hitting their stride, and I don't think I talked to anybody except for the person at the general store when I needed some more soap, and the Zen master, because they would have meetings occasionally and just say, how you doing? Or, do you have any suggestions or comments or thoughts? So, and I told him, I said, dude, I've heard lots of people talk. I said, your stuff's amazing. I said, how long does it take you to prepare those notes? And he's like, what notes? And I said, it looks like you're reading because you've got your head down. He's like, no, this is all just coming out of my skull. So, but anyway, that was a 7-day silent retreat in Thailand. And I would say that of the people, 90% were quiet. 10 were that's the old, you're going to have some bad apples. but I got what I want, what I was going for, which was a beautiful retreat in the jungle. So
Yeah, very good. And like with all the different ones that you've done, because like I've tried the mindful eating with when I was in Costa Rica, and eating with your hands and just really slowly, and you appreciate food so much, and you're eating so much slower, and just were you doing that as well, or was that part of it?
it was, yeah. So that's part of the mindfulness training, and they recommend that. It's like no matter what you're doing, walking, brushing your teeth, eating, just pay attention and slow down. And so the first time I ever really felt gratitude for food was at one of probably my third or fourth retreat. I was in Providence, Rhode Island, and we had been quiet for a while, and they brought me this beautiful bowl of soup on like day 5. They fed us really nice food, but on day 5, I just looked at it, and I actually, it sounds really cheesy, but I had tears in my eyes because I finally appreciated food and everything that brought it to that table. And the gratitude that I felt for the first time was amazing. So it's being grateful and being mindful of everything that's happening. So
I've been since that time. I'm always conscious of my food. I'm always kind of, even when I try, when the weather's nice, I try to go out into the garden, barefoot, grounding myself, and I'm always just looking at the food, and I'm always kind of grateful. I kind of give thanks to whoever provided it and everything. It's just like to appreciate it, and I'm always enjoying my food. And I think just by doing that, I think it kind of enters your body in a better way instead of just scoffing at them.
absolutely. So that's one of the things that we did at ZMC. It's ZMC stands for Zen Mountain Center, and it's it's up in the mountains of Southern California. But we had a chant before every meal where we said, basically, may all beings be happy, may all beings be well fed, may all beings be loved, may all beings be happy, may all beings be loved and well fed, and may all beings awaken to find their true way. And we would give thanks to everything and everyone that brought that food to the spot. Whoever baked the bread or whoever grew the wheat or whatever, that's what you're thinking. And before every work round, when we went out and, people were either doing housekeeping or sweeping or raking, we would all do this chant that basically said, safety is important. We're doing this, to serve others. And again, it was always about may all beings be happy, and may all beings awaken to find their true way. So it was always taking it away from ourselves and looking into the bigger picture of everyone else that we're, part of this experience with.
Oh, excellent. And like through your journey, I'm just curious, what's your kind of life like now? What have you incorporated into, like, between mindful eating and meditation and everything? What's changed in your life from previous to doing all this?
I don't know how much that I can attribute this to the fact that I'm now almost 50. I'll be 54 in July. I don't know how much of that I contribute to just getting older and being a little wiser or more mature. I don't know. But what, and a lot of people would say I'm not very mature at all because I'm goofy, but I would say that I've slowed down to where I appreciate people and relationships more, which are important. So it's less about me and it's more about making sure that, I don't cause anyone else any harm or any more suffering, and that I take care of people. And so I'm not a good multitasker, and people that tell you they're good multitaskers generally are full of shit, and they get, in my opinion, they get a bunch of stuff done, but none of it's like really all that good. And so what I learned at through meditation and mindfulness is that I can do pretty much anything I set my mind to that I want to do, but I can't do that while I'm, I'm really good on technology. That's where I make my money. I'm a technology consultant. So if I'm sitting there looking at the computer and I'm cranking out some really cool project, and then my fiance, soon to be my wife, comes in and asks me a question or wants to talk about something, I can't do both. Something's going to suffer. So I stop what I'm doing and I turn to Meg and I address Meg, and we have an interaction, and I give her everything that I've got. And then when that's done, I go back and giving this everything that I've got. And so what I try to do is pay attention to whatever I'm doing as much as possible and not have a whole bunch of other things going on. So if I'm cooking like I was last night, I can have some basic music going on in the background, but I can't also watch a movie or a game because, like a sporting event, because I'm going to lose something. Something's going to get missed. So I live up here in the mountains. We have a really nice property, and I'm always out doing something in the yard work after I get done working. And I don't put earbuds in. I don't listen to music. I just try to stay in the moment. And like, I don't know if you just heard that bird, but as soon as I said that, there was a bird in the background. And I just try to be out there in nature and experience what I'm doing with the shovel or the rake or whatever, and hearing the wind and feeling the sun. So.
Yeah, well, I do the exact same. And regarding, as you say, multitasking, I totally agree with you. Because, like, say, if I'm editing a podcast, I don't have my phone. I'm not scrolling through as I'm just kind of, because the odd time it's happened, and you just kind of get distracted. You can't. You have to be totally focused. But by doing that, I found that you get so much more done. Loads of people go, how come you're doing this? How come you can do 5 podcasts? How come you can read 100 books? How can you do this? Because when I'm there, I'm there.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like you're capable of doing amazing things if you're doing one amazing thing at a time. And I did my own audio book. I wrote the book. It took me forever. And then I did the audiobook version of it, which took me forever. But I narrated it right here with this Blue Yeti microphone that I've got, and I edited it on my Mac painstakingly to get rid of all the ips and ahs and the breaths. And it was not necessary, but I wanted to do it right. And I would, if I was editing a chapter, which took 2-3 hours, and then I went away and did something, and I went back, it took me 15 minutes to get back into it. So, it's best for me to keep doing something, do it well, and avoid starting and stopping, because email comes in and I look at it and then I'm like, okay, what the hell was I doing over there? And then it's like, then I have to start the engine again. So
exactly.
That's the best thing about mindfulness, is just stay here. Like you said, when I'm there, I'm there. When I'm here, I'm here. And you can tell when someone's paying attention and listening to you and not formulating their next thing or thinking about the burrito they want to eat, or something. It's like, you can tell when someone's paying attention when they're here. So that's what I try to do for people.
Oh, absolutely. And like the book then, because is it about your journeys, or what exactly is the book about?
Yeah. So thank you. It's called Passport Forward, and passport, of course, because I've been to so many countries, and forward is because I'm always, wanting to improve or advance. So Passport Forward, and it's all about, the subtitle is Moving from Regrets and Routine to Freedom, Passion, and Adventure. So it's all about finding your freedom and your passion and your adventure in everyday life, and getting away from the shoulda, woulda, coulda, and the regrets and the routine that a lot of people find themselves in. And so it draws on some of the crazy stories that I had while I was traveling around the world, where I almost got killed in Mongolia, or there were in the Philippines when I was scuba diving, somebody dropped a bomb and to blow up the fish so that they could fish easier, and it destroyed the coral and everything. Luckily, I wasn't in the water, but I was over there near that. So it's some crazy stories that most people would never have. And but then it's also some of the insights. It's like, by traveling for so long by myself, I traveled mostly by myself. Occasionally I would hook up with somebody or multiple people and we travel together. But I really learned who I was because I was alone a lot. And, I had to figure out how to do everything. There was no guidebook that said, hey, when you get off the bus in Lviv, in Ukraine, go here or go there. There is a book, but basically I would just make it up as I went along. And so I learned how to deal with any situation that life threw at me, and just, make the best of it. So that's the book's about. Half of it's about these crazy stories and, kind of putting my interesting, funny twist on it, I believe. And then the rest of it are the insights and suggestions about how to live a more adventurous and liberating life, and get out of the regrets and the routine of life. So
Excellent. And like you mentioned about, spending the time to do the audiobook and editing, which you didn't need to do. And I do the same for the podcast. I know loads, they just put it out as it is. And I could do probably 100 times more podcasts. But I know that when I'm listening and you hear a lot of stuff that could have been taken out, I believe you're respecting your listeners by actually doing that, and
Exactly.
reducing long pauses and lip smacking and different things like that. And I think in turn it pays off. There's more people will share it or enjoy it more.
Exactly. That's the thing. I don't mind doing a mediocre job on something that's not that big of a deal. Like if I'm doing yard work and I'm raking something, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if I'm going to do something that's going to be permanent, like for one of my customers or, my audiobook, of course I can go back and re-edit something and upload it again to Amazon or whatever, but I don't want it to be half-assed. I want it to be really good, a good experience, a high quality product, whether it was the paperback version or the Kindle version of my book. I wanted to make it a work of art. So that's what I was striving for. So I do the things that are important, in my opinion, really well. And then the rest of the stuff, I just, get it by. But if it's important to me, like you say, your podcast is, then the extra time is worth it.
Absolutely. And I've saw as well that you've done a Kickstarter campaign for the book. So I'm curious about, because I'm actually currently writing a few books, and I'd like to know about that, the Kickstarter campaign. What was the purpose and how it worked out?
Oh, well, yeah, thanks. And actually what I did it for was to finally put a deadline on my book so that I got it done and quit dorking around. So this is 5-6 years ago, I forget. And it was right around Christmas. So what I did was I told everybody, I did a Kickstarter campaign that ran for, I don't know, 6 weeks. I can't remember the time, but I was selling advanced copies of a book that didn't exist. I was selling it, and I'm a man of integrity. So if I promise you I'm going to do something, I want to do it. So I said my book, which back then was called The Lexpedition, which was my website, thelexpedition.com. The book was called The Lexpedition, and I had paperback, hardcover, and full color versions, or hardcover, paperback, and something else. And people could buy multiple packages of, for their friends, etc. And so I sent this out to all the people that have been following my travels around the world. I had a 900 person subscriber list, and I ended up pre-selling, I don't know, 250 books or 300 books. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. And I ended up selling some other things too, that I ended up generating $10,000 in 6 weeks for advanced copies of my books. I forget the total. It's been a while, but what it did, Roy, the most important thing was I set a deadline, and I told people they're going to have their books by Christmas. And so then what I had to do was I had to hurry up and get my book edited, published, and printed and shipped to my house so that I could address all the envelopes and mail them, etc. And then my girlfriend at the time, my fiance now, and we got on a plane and went to Peru, I think, or Nicaragua for Christmas. So if you wanted to do something like this, or one of your listeners wanted to do this, it's a tremendous way. If you have a decent size audience, which you do, you can say, hey, I've got this new book coming out for cryptocurrency or for meditation. It's going to be available. What are we now? It's March of 2022 when you and I are talking. And you say, hey, it's coming out, August 1st. Get your advanced copies here. Do a Kickstarter. They keep a 5% cut, which is no big deal because they process the credit cards and handle all of it. But you are able to put it on Facebook and your email, and you can text it to your friends and say, hey, I got this book coming out you might be interested in. And if they love you and they know that they want this subject or whatever, it works pretty well. And it also serves a purpose. If you're a kind of person that needs a deadline to work backward from, you've got the built-in inherent deadline. You say, okay, if I need to ship this on August 1st, I've got to have it out of the publisher by July 15th at the latest. So then you start working back, okay, the edits and this and the images and the audiobook, etc. So you can upsell people, in a good way. You can say, hey, when the audiobook comes out, I'll give it to you for free if you buy the the hardcover or something. So.
Oh, brilliant. And because I've heard with like different Kickstarters, Indigo, and all these different ones, that it's kind of down to your audience. And you mentioned you'd like 900 on your list. Do you know, is there a way of tracking that, like from the actual people that just go into Kickstarter and check it? Did you actually gain some from that as well? Or was it mainly from your own kind of connections, friends, and the different people that have been following you?
Actually, yes. So 90% of the sales came directly from my list of the 900 people. Some people told people and they bought a book or something, but it's, without getting, I'm a tech guy. I can sometimes be nerdy, but there is a way inside of Kickstarter. I'm a big fan of Kickstarter. There's other versions, but Kickstarter has been around forever. They're really good. So Kickstarter has a way that you can, they will help you embed or create embeddable links. So if you're doing a Facebook thing and you share it on Facebook, anytime somebody clicks that and goes to Kickstarter, it tracks it and says, okay, this one came from Facebook. This one came from your email blast. This one came from a text message. And they're shortened. They're called like bit.ly or shortened condensed URLs. And when someone clicks on it, they don't know that it's being tracked. It's not bad, but then you can say these sales came from this particular medium, and this came from that. And, this came from my podcast, et cetera. So.
No, that's very handy, because for marketing purposes, if you're able to track that, then you can go, wow, I actually got 20% through this Facebook. So it's worth doing a promotion on Facebook because it's, or whatever, it was the better version. So yeah, no, that's great.
I've got a buddy of mine, actually, he lives currently in Germany, in Berlin. And I stayed with him when I was over there. He's an American guy, but he's been living in Berlin forever, and his wife and kids. And so I stayed with him for a few days. He's a professional cookbook writer, and he's a professional cook. His name is Justin. And he's written this, it's called The Lotus and the Artichoke. I think that's the name of his brand, Lotus and the Artichoke. And he's done one for Sri Lanka. He's done one for Malaysia. He's done one for India, et cetera. And he's done it all through Kickstarter. So he's the one that kind of taught me about it. He's like, Lex, if you're going to write a book and you do, if you want to do some pre-selling stuff, check out Kickstarter. And yeah, I went and kind of modeled my stuff after his. So there's people that have done it before for books, and it works. It's a legitimate model. So, and then, he's made a lot of money pre-selling cookbooks and selling cookbooks on Kickstarter. So.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Yeah, well, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I have to start looking about that. Listen, Lex, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You might let people know how can they get in contact with you.
Sure. The easiest way is to go to my website, which is, so my name's Lex, Lex. So thelexpedition.com. So thelexpedition.com. It's pretty straightforward. And you can see, you can contact me through there. You can see my books and my podcasts that I've been on, and my speaking arrangements, et cetera. And, I do a lot of different things, and I'm always happy to help people. If they have questions about meditation or travel or technology or whatever, people come to me for different things. But as long as somebody has a sincere interest in getting better, or if they're asking for help, I'm willing to help anybody. So just reach out to me.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Lex.
All right, Roy, thank you for having me. And it's nice to meet you, and onward and upward.
Exactly. Thanks very much. So
cheers.
That's all for the meditation podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. We're also on BitChute, and you'll find the links in the podcast description. Until next week, take care.